Here.
Councilor Siono. Present. Councilor Edwards. Councilor Salvatore.
I'm not taking my
Councilor
boots off.
Flaherty. Councilor Flynn. Councilor Councilor Presley. Present. Councilor Wu. And Councilor Zager.
Madam President, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I am informed by the clerk that a quorum is present. At this time, I would like all guests, including my colleagues, to please rise as Councilor McCarthy introduces the clergy for the day. And after the invocation, I would ask that everyone remain standing as he leads us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you very much, Madam President, and welcome everybody. Good afternoon. I am very happy to introduce Reverend Randy Copeland today. Reverend is the good minister of Nita Holder, who works in my office. So I know that he must have been doing something right, because Nita's awesome, so it's working out well. Just a little background on the Reverend. He graduated from Mario Umana Harbor School in the Science and Technology in 1982. He enlisted into the United States Marine Corps and served our country for 4 years. Came home, entered the workforce in 1999. He accepted the calling from our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and under the leadership of Reverend Michael Ellis, pastor of Columbus Avenue African Methodist Episcopal Zion Church, he completed his ministry and studies and was ordained the elder by Bishop George Walker. He was appointed to Rush Memorial Zion Church in Cambridge. In 2002, he was the pastor of St. Luke's Christian Zion Church in Dorchester. In June of 15, Bishop Bonnie Hines moved him back to Rush AME Zion Church, where he pastored there for 2 years. Along with his congregation, he served the community by feeding those who were hungry and through his food giveaways. During Thanksgiving and Christmas season in particular. They had clothes giveaways, and they also adopted a few families during Christmas to provide them with gifts and clothes and celebrate the holidays. Today, he is a conference evangelist for the Boston District of New England Annual Conference Zion Church, and he sits on the ministerial staff in the Columbus Ave Zion Church. He is married to his beautiful wife, Cynthia, of 25 years. They have 2 children, Catrice and Randy, and 1 grandchild, Zariah. So without further ado, I give you the Reverend Randy Copeland.
Thank you. Good morning, and thank you for having me here today. Before I pray, I would ask you to take some time out of your busy schedule to remember the life and the work of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. Today marks the 50th anniversary of his assassination. Remember him for he was a great civil rights leader. Remember him for his nonviolent messages and protests. Remember him for what he stood for, equality for all humankind. His work and his movement are needed more today than ever. And they will ring a bell in different cities 39 times to remember this day. And I invite you to ring a bell in your heart for him and all that he has done to help us to be better people and live together in this nation, but more importantly, to live together in Boston. Let us pray. Oh God, our help in ages past, our hope for years to come, our shelter from the stormy blast, and our eternal home. Father God, the creator of every good and perfect gift, we come before you this afternoon with thanksgiving in our hearts. We are thankful for your blessings. We are thankful for your gifts. We are thankful for this city, and we are thankful for our leaders. Lord, please be in the midst of this meeting where there will be business discussed and decisions made. I pray that you would guide the hearts and the minds of those making these decisions so that they would benefit the people of this great city of Boston where we live. Guide our leaders through this journey called life. Give them wisdom to do for the people what you called them to do. Bless our governor, bless our mayor, bless our council, and bless everyone who plays a part in making Boston what it is. Send peace to our city so that when those who are out there trying to protect us and help us, the police, the firefighters, the doctors, EMTs, and all others who work for our welfare and safekeeping can make it back home to their families safely after working to protect us. We pray for you, Lord, the Almighty God, to have your way over this city that we love so much, so our children can grow up and appreciate what our ancestors, our leaders, this council board are doing for them to create a place where they can grow and be successful and raise their families. Thank you, Lord, for allowing us to gather together to ask the Lord's blessings. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Perfect. Thank you, Madam Clerk. If we could amend the attendance record to reflect that Councilor Zakhem is here. And moving on to approval of the minutes, if there are no corrections to be made, the minutes of the last council meeting will stand approved. Seeing and hearing no objection, the minutes are so approved. Communications from His Honor the Mayor.
Docket number 0505, message and ordinance amending CBC Ordinance Chapter 16, Section 1612.3, governing advertising of freestanding signs, filed in the City Clerk's office on April 4th, 2018.
Docket 0505 will be placed in the Committee on Government Operations.
That'd be right. Docket number 0506, message in order to declare surplus city-owned former Public Works Department parcel, property known as Leo M. Birmingham Parkway in the Alston/Brighton District, Ward 22, parcel 027-62010, to transfer care, custody, management, and control of said property to the Public Facilities Commission.
Docket 0506 will be placed in the Committee on Planning, Development, and Transportation.
Madam President, would you like me to read both matters?
That would be great. Thank you.
Docket number 0507, message in order to reduce the FY appropriation for the reserve for collective bargaining by $8,451 to provide funding for the Boston Public Health Commission for the FY18 increase contained within the collective bargaining agreement between the Boston Health Commission and Local 888 SEIU Clerical Technical Unit. And docket number 0508, message in order approving a supplemental appropriation of $8,451 to cover the costs contained in the FY18 collective bargaining agreement between the Boston Health Commission and Local 888 SEIU Clerical Technical Unit. The terms of the contract are October 1st, 2016 through September 30th, 2017, and October 1st, 2017 through September 30th, 2020. The major provisions of the contract include base wage increases of 2%, effective the first period of January for each fiscal year. The agreement also contains other benefits, including a new step beginning in 2019, filed in the Office of the City Clerk on April 4th, 2018.
The Chair recognizes Councilor Siomo, the Chair of the Committee on Ways and Means.
Thank you. I rise to ask suspension and passage of these collective bargaining agreements. It's for 10 employees. We've had numerous hearings on the collective bargaining agreements throughout this year and last year, and it follows the same wage pattern and same additional steps and other efficiencies throughout. I want to thank Kate Sullivan for sending out the summary and the contracts yesterday, so I ask that we pass this along today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Siomo. At this time, Councilor Siomo, the Chair of the Committee on Ways and Means, asks for suspension of the rules and passage of docket 0507 and 0508. I will take each one separately, starting with docket 0507. Madam Clerk, if you could call the roll.
Councilor Baker? Yes. Councilor Baker, yes. Councilor Campbell?
Yes.
Councilor Campbell, yes. Councilor Siomo? Yes. Councilor Siomo, yes. Councilor Edwards? Councilor Edwards, yes. Councilor Asabi George? Yes. Councilor Asabi George, yes. Councilor Flaherty? Counselor Flaherty, yes. Counselor Flynn. Counselor Flynn, yes. Counselor Janey. Counselor Janey, yes. Counselor McCarthy. Counselor McCarthy, yes. Counselor O'Malley. Counselor O'Malley, yes. Counselor Presley. Counselor Presley, yes. Counselor Wu. Counselor Wu, yes. And Counselor Zachem. Counselor Zachem, yes. Madam President, docket number 0507 has received a unanimous vote.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Docket 0507 has been passed. If we could call the roll for docket 0508.
Thank you. Docket number 0508, Counselor Baker. Yes. Counselor Baker, yes. Counselor Campbell.
Yes.
Counselor Campbell, yes. Counselor Siomo. Counselor Siomo, yes. Counselor Edwards. Counselor Edwards, yes. Counselor Asabi George. Yes. Counselor Asabi George, yes. Counselor Flaherty. Yes. Counselor Flaherty, yes. Counselor Flynn. Yes. Counselor Flynn, yes. Counselor Janey. Yes. Counselor Janey, yes. Counselor McCarthy. Yes. Counselor McCarthy, yes. Counselor O'Malley. Yes. Counselor O'Malley, yes. Counselor Presley. Yes. Counselor Presley, yes. Counselor Wu. Counselor Wu, yes. And Counselor Zachem. Counselor Zachem, yes. Madam President, docket number 0508 has received a unanimous vote.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Docket 0508 has been passed. Moving on to docket 0509.
Docket number 0509, message and order for the confirmation of the reappointment of Kathleen Douglas Stone as a member of the Boston Water and Sewer Commission for a term ending January 1st, 2022.
Docket 0509 will be assigned to the Committee on City, Neighborhood Services, and Veterans and Military Affairs. Reports of public officers and others.
Madam President, if you would like, I could read from
Docket.
0510 through 0532.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Docket number 0510, notices received from the mayor of the reappointment of Meg Mainzer Cohen as a trustee of the Copley Square Charitable Trust for a term expiring February 15, 2020. Docket number 0511, notices received from the mayor of the reappointment of Francis G. Crosby as a trustee of the Copley Square Charitable Trust for a term expiring February 15, 2020. Docket number 0512, notices received from the mayor of the reappointment of Nancy S. Brickley as a trustee of the Copley Square Charitable Trust for a term expiring February 15, 2020. Docket number 0513, notices received from the mayor of the appointment of Christopher Cook as a trustee of the Copley Square Charitable Trust for a term expiring February 15, 2020. Docket number 0514, notices received from the mayor of the appointment of Christopher Osgood as a trustee of the Copley Square Charitable Trust for a term expiring February 15, 2020. Docket number 0515, notices received from the mayor of the appointment of Daniel Donahue as a trustee of the Copley Square Charitable Trust for a term expiring February 15, 2020. Docket number 0516, notices received from the mayor of the appointment of Leo Fonseca as a trustee of the Copley Square Charitable Trust for a term expiring February 15, 2020. Docket number 0517, notices received from the mayor of the reappointment of Christopher Cook as a member of the Freedom Trail Commission for a term expiring January 3rd, 2022. Docket number 0518, notices received from the mayor of the reappointment of Richard Berenson as a member of the Freedom Trail Commission for a term expiring January 3rd, 2022. Docket number 0519, notices received from the mayor of the reappointment of Sean Hennessy as a member of the Freedom Trail Commission for a term expiring January 3rd, 2022. Docket number 0520, notices received from the mayor of the reappointment of Susan Taylor as a member of the Freedom Trail Commission for a term expiring January 3rd, 2022. Docket number 0521, notices received from the mayor of the reappointment of Christopher Osgood as a member of the Freedom Trail Commission for a term expiring January 3rd, 2022. Docket number 0522, notices received from the mayor of the appointment of Blanco Tosada as a member of the Residency Compliance Commission for a term expiring January 2nd, 2022. Docket number 0523, notice is received from the mayor of the reappointment of Denise Williams Harris as a member of the Residency Compliance Commission for a term expiring January 3rd, 2022. Docket number 0524, notice was received from the mayor of the reappointment of Eileen Boyle as a member of the Residency Compliance Commission for a term expiring January 3rd, 2022. Docket number 0525, notice was received from the mayor of the reappointment of Francis Doyle as a member of the Residency Compliance Commission for a term expiring January 3rd, 2022. Docket number 0526, notice was received from the mayor of the reappointment of Jordan Deasy as a member of the Residency Compliance Commission for a term expiring January 3rd, 2022. Docket number 0527, notice was received from the mayor of the reappointment of Catherine Perkensis as a member of the City of Boston Scholarship Fund Committee for a term expiring March 16th, 2021. Docket number 0528, notice is received from the mayor of the reappointment of Natasha Thomas as a member of the Living Wage Advisory Committee for a term expiring March 16th, 2021. Docket number 0529, notice received from Councilor Asabi George, who will be holding a briefing regarding the 2017 Vision Zero Progress Report for Boston, which will be presented to the City Council and Council staff by the Livable Streets Alliance. This meeting will be held on Wednesday, April 11th at 2018 at 10 a.m. in the Curley Room of the Boston City Council. Councilor Asabi is requesting the suspension of Rule 34 as the rules of the Boston City Council municipal year 2018 to 2019, because this briefing will be held on Wednesday. And I don't know if you want to, as we finish, go back and do that.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Docket number 0530, notice was received from the mayor of the reappointment of Craig Galvin as a member to the City of Boston Scholarship Fund Committee for a term expiring March 23rd, 2021. Docket number 0531, notice was received from the mayor of the appointment of Brooke Woodson as the chairperson to the City of Boston Scholarship Fund Committee, effective immediately. And docket number 0532, notice was received from Sheila Dillon, Chief of Housing, of the 2017 Annual Report on Boston's affordable housing.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Dockets
Yeah.
0510 through 0532 will be placed on file. With respect to docket 0529, Councilor Asabi George, do you want to say a few words?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
I just request approval or request suspension of Rule 34 in order to hold this briefing for the council and the council staff who might be interested in attending this briefing put on by the Livable Streets Alliance.
Thank you so much. At this time, Councilor Asabi George seeks suspension of Rule 34 to allow this briefing to be held on the same day that we have a council meeting. The briefing, as articulated in her letter, is at 10, so it should not interfere. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Rule 34 has been suspended, and we all look forward to the briefing on April 11th. Thank you, Councilor. Matters recently heard for possible action.
Docket number 0178, order for hearing regarding speculation in the Boston housing market.
The chair recognizes Councilor Edwards, the chair of the Committee on Housing and Community Development.
I just wanted to give a brief overview of what happened yesterday here at the City Council. First, thanking my colleagues who came, the Vice Chair of the committee, Councilor Janey, Councilor Flynn, Councilor McCarthy, Councilor Zachem, Councilor O'Malley, and Councilor Asabi George and Councilor Campbell all came at some points to not only hear from our respective incredible community of Boston, but also to vet the agencies who are responsible for making sure that our community can stay in Boston. Along with the many activists, we also had folks in the real estate industry, we had folks from short-term rental industry, and it was a 4-hour discussion of really not only talking about what speculation looks like, but also some solutions for our city and how we could hopefully house as many people as possible, making sure that Boston is remaining a city for working families. We reviewed a great deal of things, including really getting down to some statistics on what's happening with regards to speculation. We learned that there have been about 1,100 flips between 2015 and 2017. These are secondary sales within 2 years in our real estate market, and that there's a growing amount of flips actually with the 2-family and 3-family homes. We also learned, I think, when it comes to the condo conversion, actually a lot of those are half of the flips are happening within condos. We also learned with the protections that we do have, there are some limited provisions that we have as a city. With the condo conversion statute, for example, we cannot amend it, even though it only reaches and protects 5 units or more. A lot of the condo conversions is happening in our 2- and 3-deckers, and there's no protections, and that law does not apply for it. And I was surprised to learn that in order to make it apply, we would have to amend I think it was the statute on rent control. That actually said that we would not be able to limit or control or adjust how condo conversions are happening in Boston. So this is, I thought, a moment for us not only to collectively speak, but to be collectively informed about what our limits are as a city council, but also what opportunities we have as well. We talked about the rising rents in Boston, particularly on April 1st. With the narrative that we need to build more in order to stabilize rents, we saw in a recent article in the Boston Globe that the rents are actually going up. And so D&D tried to address some of that discrepancy and making sure that we were headed still on the right path of stabilizing our rental market. I also mentioned that they might be increasing that goal of 53,000 units to go even more. So ultimately, I think that this was an incredibly successful moment for us, and a lot of the questions I still have for D&D to follow up on and to give us additional statistics. I think it was really important to be as informed as possible before we suggest certain things, certain taxes, certain limits on the housing market. And I really, again, want to thank all my colleagues for coming to my, not first hearing, but first hearing here in City Hall. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilor Edwards. Anyone else like to speak on this matter? Okay. At this time, docket 0178. That was going to be my question. Docket 0178 will remain in the Committee on Housing and Community Development.
Docket number 0474, order for a hearing to conduct a comprehensive review of reentry resources for incarcerated populations in Boston.
The chair recognizes Councilor McCarthy, the chair of the Committee on Public Safety and Criminal Justice, who I think is going to...
Thank you very much, Madam President. There we go. Thank you very much, Madam President. Actually, I had a scheduling conflict and I could not make it, but I know that after reviewing some of the tape and talking to my colleagues, I know you did a fantastic job last night, so I'd like to hand it back over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor McCarthy, and I will say just a couple of words. And thank you for your leadership with respect to the Committee on Public Safety and Criminal Justice. I thought the hearing last night was incredible. It was at the Suffolk County House of Correction. So I want to thank Sheriff Tompkins, but also Councilor Baker, who was there the entire time, Councilor Flynn and Councilor Janey and Councilor Edwards, as well as my other colleagues who couldn't make it because of so many different scheduling conflicts, but expressed their interest to continue to be a part of the conversation. We heard from numerous folks, particularly from folks who are currently serving time, both 2 men and 2 women at Suffolk County House of Correction, to talk about ways in which we could assist them in their reentry, and not just assist them when they get out and are returning to our community, but how do we start that process while they're currently serving time. There were powerful stories people shared about addiction, recovery, homelessness, wanting to work hard, and just needing that second chance. It was also powerful in that we heard from service providers who cover a broad spectrum. Some of them do recovery work, housing work, self-esteem work, confidence work, mental health. The list was long. And so the question now is, what can we do at a local level? It was made loud and clear that we need to continue to advocate to our state colleagues for them to resource and fund these type of programs that have an incredible impact on the men and women who are going to ultimately return to our community when they get out. And City of Boston in particular, although we don't house all of the Department of Corrections and the prisons and the houses of correction in this state. Majority of folks who are returning are coming back to the City of Boston. So there is a role that we must play. Another thing that was talked about is, in addition to encouraging the state to come up with resources, if there's any resources at the city level that we could put forth, that's a suggestion. Also, the importance of linking programs and how our current Office of Returning Citizens could play a role in the linkage of these programs, so it truly is a one-stop shop for folks to go into a place and receive all the services they need to get back on their feet. And lastly, the common theme that we heard from folks is, you know, they get out and they're frustrated because it's so hard for that second chance. It's so hard to get back on their feet. But I left with a sense of optimism and hope because not just of the testimony from providers, but those who were actually transformed by some of these programs. And there was one gentleman in particular who I thought was really dynamic, who currently has a job with Local 6 as an insulator, which speaks to the power of our trades and the work they're doing with I guess Damon is a friend, but with men and women who are getting out, but the work of our trades and the work of many folks, including folks on this very body, to ensure that they are successful. So I look forward to continuing the work with all of my colleagues. Thank you again, Councilor McCarthy. Thank you again to all of my colleagues who participated. In this matter, docket 0474 will remain in the Committee on Public Safety and Criminal Justice. Moving on to motions, orders, and resolutions.
Docket number 0533, Council McCarthy and Flynn offered the following order approving a petition for a special law regarding an act regarding the disability pension for Francis Jankowski. And I'll read docket number 0534 also, Madam President, if you wish. Docket number 0534, Council McCarthy and Flynn offered the following order approving a petition for a special law regarding an act regarding the disability pension of Terry L. Cotton.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Councilor McCarthy, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Very happy to partner with my good friend and colleague, Ed Flynn, on these two petitions. Both officers were injured in the line of duty. Officer Frank Jankowski was seriously injured at the Boston Marathon finish line, and Boston Police Officer Terry Cotton was shot several times. And as we have this hearing, we'll get further into their stories and the complications of their issues. But what I want to state wholeheartedly and in all honesty, these are extraordinary circumstances. These are gentlemen who have had debilitating injuries. These are injuries that are permanent. These are injuries that are life-altering. You know, these aren't twisted ankles and broken collarbones. These are injuries that will haunt them for the rest of their lives. So that's why we bring this forward to the Retirement Board. And I certainly have been, a lot of people have called and kind of given me the warning that there could be a flood of people coming our way. And I certainly understand that. But I hope that the people in the service of the police and the EMS and the fire realize that this is a precious gift, that we have life, and I hope that, in all honesty, that people who can return to work do return to work, and that's what this is really all about. These two gentlemen simply can't return to work, and it's time for us to put it on the floor, to talk about it, to discuss it, and see how we can lead them into a little bit of fulfillment in their career. So I thank them both for their service. I'm looking forward to an expedited hearing.
Thank you, Councilor McCarthy. Councilor Flynn, you have the floor.
Yep. Thank you, Madam President. Thank you to Councilor McCarthy for working with me on this order, for Officer Jankowski and for Officer Cotton. Councilor McCarthy highlighted the reasons why. This is a special circumstances. It's very unique, and we take this. We studied the report along with some medical information, and we had an opportunity to talk to many people about this issue. And again, we don't take this lightly, and it's a very special issue. But if a city employee, puts his life on the line in very difficult environments, the city should be there for that individual, whether it's a police officer or a firefighter. We put great trust in these men and women to keep us safe. And I'm just thinking that the Boston Marathon is approaching very soon, and one of these officers was impacted during that bombing. And I think as a city, as a government, we must show compassion, treat these officers with dignity and respect, because they've been serving our city so well, often underappreciated at times, but they're putting their life on the line for us, for our safety. And this is something that I strongly believe in. But again, myself and Council McCarthy don't take this lightly, and we have studied it extensively, and we will continue to work with our colleagues here on the City Council. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Thank you very much, Councillor Flynn. Dockets 0533 and 0534 will be assigned to the Committee on, I apologize. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Before I assign it, Councillor Baker, would you like to speak? Madam Clerk? We're going to add names at this point before we send it off to a committee. If you could add Councillor Baker, Councillor Asabi George, Councillor O'Malley, as well as the Chair, and dockets 0533 and 0534 will be assigned to the Committee on Government Operations.
Docket number 0535, Councilor Janey offered the following order for hearing regarding teacher diversity in the Boston Public Schools.
Councillor Janey, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Madam President. So I rise to call attention to teacher diversity, or the lack thereof teacher diversity in Boston Public Schools. This isn't a new issue. It is a persistent problem that needs to stay before us until we achieve the desired goal. This is an issue that I've worked on for many years as an advocate, pressing and pushing Boston Public Schools to devise new strategies to increase teacher diversity. Now, many of you may have seen the recent report, Broken Promises, Teacher Diversity in Boston Public Schools, and I want to thank and commend the authors of that report, especially those who I had the pleasure of working side by side with as an advocate. Many groups like the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights and Economic Justice, the Black Educators Alliance of Massachusetts, the Boston NAACP, and the Boston Teachers Union. I believe that a diverse teaching force which reflects our student body is very necessary if we're going to bring about equity in our city, especially for educational equity. If we're going to be successful in eliminating opportunity and achievement gaps, we must focus on the recruitment, the hiring, the developing, the supporting, and the retaining of a teaching force that reflects the rich diversity that matches our student body. Right now, while we have 86% of our students that are Black, Latino, or Asian, the percent of teachers who are Black, Latino, or Asian remains at a dismal 36%. In reports given to the City Council each year from 2011 all the way up until last year, the percentage of Black teachers fell from 22.4% to 20%, despite the court order that requires 25% Black teachers, and we have a student population of 35% Black teachers. And that same court order requires 10% other. The biggest disparity, however, we see is between the percentage of Latino teachers and Latino students. Latino teachers have remained stagnant at 10%, while our Latino population of students is 42%. And there have been several studies. So this most recent one we see is focused on Boston Public Schools, but there are several studies that have looked at teacher diversity and the importance of teacher diversity and what it means for our students. And just to highlight some of those conclusions from those studies, we know that Black teachers have higher expectations for Black students, and that white students hold similar expectations when teaching the same white students, but they often disagree when it comes to that Black student, where the white teacher would have a lower expectation of that Black child. When a white teacher and a Black teacher evaluate the very same Black student, one study found that the white teacher is 30% less likely to believe that the student will graduate from a four-year college, and 40% less likely to graduate from high school. Black teachers are significantly more successful than white teachers in improving reading and vocabulary scores of Black students. All things being equal, Black students are 3 times more likely to be assigned gifted programs when taught by Black teachers than a non-Black teacher. Black children are more likely to be identified as a problem child or a child that has to be referred to special education when being taught by a white teacher. Black children face harsher penalties when it comes to school discipline from white teachers, which of course contributes to the school-to-prison pipeline. The student perceptions that teachers hold also make a big difference. There are students who say that when they have teachers who look like them, that they're just more likely to be engaged in what they're learning, have stronger relationships with those teachers, and that's also very important. I would also like to highlight that this is not just about racial diversity, that it's important to have cultural diversity, linguistic diversity, gender diversity. We need more students who speak the variety of languages that our students speak at home. We also need more male teachers of color. And we know that teacher diversity is good for all students. This is not just what is good for students of color or what is good for Black students, but all students report being much more engaged and having stronger relationships and just enjoying seeing other teachers, whether they look like them or don't look like them. So this is good for our white students as well. This will just make our school system stronger. It gets us closer to the elimination of opportunity and achievement gaps. Again, this is not a new issue, but it's a persistent problem that needs new investment and new ideas. So I'm really eager to hear what Boston Public Schools is doing to increase teacher diversity. It's not, for me, a compliance issue about an outdated court order, but it's really about what is good for the education of our students. I want to hear what BPS is doing. I'm very much interested in hearing from the advocates who put this report together, from parents and from students, and would love to hear the thoughts of my colleagues on this body. For me, this is an issue of racial justice. So in closing, as we recognize the 50th anniversary of the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King, I'd like to leave you with one of his quotes on education, and that is that education must enable one to sift and weigh evidence, to discern the truth from the false, the real from the unreal, and the facts from the fiction. The function of education, therefore, is to teach one to think intensively and to think critically. Intelligence plus character, that is the goal of true education. And so, I think this is a very important issue. Again, not a new issue, but one that needs our constant support, pushing our advocacy, looking at this issue and how we can support our students and our teachers. And so I ask for you to join me in signing on to this hearing order. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilor Janey. Councilor Presley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I wish to have my name added, and I would argue for those that might be frustrated that we continue to talk about this. We have no choice. We'll continue to talk about it until we get it right. And we'll continue to shine a light on it until we get it right. I am a believer in that which gets measured gets done, and so we'll continue to measure this and to hold ourselves collectively accountable. You offered a very comprehensive and compelling case, both anecdotally and substantiated by all the data. I look forward to the hearing. When Councilor Jackson was on the council, we held a series of, and you were there many times, Kim, in your role as an advocate. There were there was hearing orders that had been filed respectively by Councilor Jackson and myself, and then we came together and had a series of working groups with BPS for almost 3 years to just go through all of the practices of recruitment, what was happening culturally within school climate that we were not, once we were recruiting teachers of color, retaining them, right? And we did begin to make some headway there, but clearly we have not achieved the end which we all seek here. So again, I thank you for this hearing, which will keep us on task and continue to hold us all collectively accountable. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Presley. At this time, Madam Clerk, could you add Councillor Presley's name? Councillor Sabi George, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise first to commend the maker on this hearing order and ask that my name be added. It is certainly an ongoing issue that has been raised a number of times and has gone on far too long. As a former teacher, I do believe that we need to focus on this issue and strive for continued racial diversity in our teaching cohort, as well as gender diversity. It is important for our students to see representation in their learning environments, and that means teachers who are with them for a majority of their day, so many days a week, so many days out of the year, that there is a reflection of both their image and their diversity and their experience. I think it's, it's incredibly important on the gender piece as well. As a mother of 4 boys, my kids have really gotten the most out of their classroom experience when they've had male teachers before them. And in fact, one of the boys just participated in a STEM after-school club with his science teacher, and I know that would not have happened had that science teacher been a woman. He has found a particular interest in this particular teacher because of the excitement that the teachers created around science, but also I think because he's a guy. And it's important for us to make sure that we're creating those connections between our students and our teachers. And I think it's also important when we talk about recruitment practices within the district, that we're looking for ways to also recruit our former students, that graduates of our district are becoming teachers in the classroom, and we're creating that opportunity because there is a shared experience among teacher and student. So I look forward to this hearing. I look forward to continuing this work and getting to a point where we don't have to have this hearing anymore. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councillor Sabi George. Madam Clerk, if you could add Councillor Sabi George. I'll add other folks at this time too. Councillor Edwards, Councillor Flynn, Councillor Wu, Councillor Zakhem, as well as the chair. Councillor McCarthy, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I would like to have my name added. I do believe that this is a very important topic, but I am also very interested in the report that was just read. I do find it hard to believe that that report reflects directly on our BPS teachers, simply because I have many schools in District 5. They are incredibly diverse. I've never met a teacher who doesn't care 100% about their kids. So I'm very interested in those statistics, where they came from, and I honestly don't believe that reflects Boston Public Schools at this point in time. So I'm looking forward to the hearing to discuss exactly where those stats came from. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, if you could add Councillor McCarthy's name, Councillor O'Malley, and docket 0535 will be placed in the Committee on Education.
Docket number 0536, Councilor O'Malley offered the following order for a hearing regarding vacant properties in the city of Boston.
Councillor O'Malley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. First, I'd like to ask for unanimous consent to add you, Council President Andrea Campbell, as an original co-sponsor to this hearing order.
I know I won't oppose, but all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I don't think anyone's opposed.
Fantastic. Well,
Thank you,
thank
Councilor
you,
O'Malley.
Madam President. Thank you for your partnership on this. I think it's not a surprise to anyone that one of the largest issues we're dealing with as a city is the affordability of Boston, and all the subsequent issues that come with that. So I've been very impressed with the work on this body as it relates to short-term rentals. Certainly, Councillor Edwards has tackled this in her capacity as chair of the Housing Committee chairman, and just yesterday had a very worthwhile and important hearing and conversation on speculation buying. As we untie the Gordian knot that is the root of this issue, we need to be looking holistically at a whole host of issues, and that is why today the Council President and I are introducing a hearing order to explore solutions to the problem of vacancy in the City of Boston. Vacant properties have various causes, and maybe the rent is too high to keep a tenant or not offering the property for rent at all while waiting for the value to rise. And what we've seen is this sort of unique phenomenon. It's not only in Boston, it's in other cities too, and I'll get to that in a moment, but you've got the economy humming. Real estate values have never been higher. Unemployment is the lowest or among the lowest it's ever been. Yet you walk around any of our business districts in every single neighborhood in the City of Boston, you're seeing an increase in vacant storefronts, and you're seeing vacancies last for longer and longer and longer. We have buildings and businesses that have remained vacant for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years in some cases. And it's known as this phenomenon which is called high-end or high-rent blight. Now, that doesn't mean that these are, Tony parts of the city or expensive neighborhoods necessarily, although I would argue that virtually every neighborhood is an expensive neighborhood. But what this means is that businesses are purposefully, landlords are making the calculation that it's less expensive for them to hold off for a higher paying rent than to have something to really activate the space at a sooner and have the vacancy last a shorter period. This is not only commercial districts, that's what we're talking about, but it also affects residential units as well, particularly some of these higher end luxury units, and the trickle-down effect would then be it's really affecting rents in all of our neighborhood and housing prices in all of our neighborhood. Now, if anyone knows me, knows I'm not looking to be anti-business. If anything, I celebrate development and what that brings. But this is not seen as a punitive measure. It's really seen as helping our small businesses, helping all of our neighborhoods, similarly to the way former Mayor Tom Menino started the Main Streets program in Rosendale Square 2+ decades ago. That was seen as a tool to help our small businesses and our residences, and this is the same thing. The MAPC has done some really good work on this. The Metropolitan Area Planning Council had showed more of our housing units are also sitting vacant in these higher-end apartments. Obviously, this then goes to our neighborhoods as well. All the neighborhoods in my district, and I know all of your neighborhoods in your districts as well, have vacancies on the city's problem properties list, and I want to thank you, Council President, for your work on this as we talk about this issue that contributes significantly to the issues on the street. We want these storefronts, we want these buildings to be activated. We want them to be vibrant. The benefit that comes with that not only is better jobs, locally owned and operated businesses, better tax revenue for the city, but also it contributes to the vibrancy of our city. We've seen it in our business districts, and it's happening, and great work from this body, from Councilor Presley and others, to help activate some of these spaces. This is another tool in the toolbox that we can use. So possible steps forward as we get to the hearing include a comprehensive data collection on vacancy in the City of Boston. As Chief Dillon said at yesterday's hearing called by Councilor Edwards, we don't have such a list to place. Now, it's difficult to ascertain the number of vacant units because we simply don't know. Again, so many have been taken offline for years and years and years, if not decades, that it skews the data. So a comprehensive data collection. We also want to examine improvements to the city's problem properties task force, as well as look at a fee levied on long-term vacant properties to incentivize landlords to put the properties back on the market at reasonable rents. This is happening all across the country. We're seeing New York City, San Francisco, LA, so many other cities that are tackling this as well. And they're exploring vacancy fee and other concepts as well. Now, as I mentioned, this is caused by what's known as high rent blight, where otherwise prosperous neighborhoods, which is every neighborhood in Boston, have vacancies on its streets because the landlords are holding out for higher rent. We could take a field trip right now and walk in any direction of the city, and we would see this. When buildings stay vacant, small businesses and residents can't find places to rent, either for their home or for their business, and our communities remain less active and less vibrant.
And that's why it's about affordability as much as it is about activating our streets. As more people and businesses move to our city, we should make sure we're using every tool in our policy toolbox and every empty property to keep the city affordable. The city's population has grown considerably from 2010. The economy is going gangbusters compared to where it was in 2010, and yet we are seeing increased vacancy and longer vacancy. We can do something about it. This isn't about punishing businesses. This isn't about forcing a landlord to take a business. This is simply asking them to meet us halfway. Let's do something. Let's activate these main streets. Really make sure that the economic engine of any city, it's downtown, but even more than that, it's the neighborhoods. The businesses in the neighborhoods are able to thrive. The rents are able to work for not only our businesses, but our residents as well. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much, Councilor O'Malley. And I'll just add a couple of words. First, thank you for your leadership on this. It's time that we do something. And I'm just happy to join in your efforts and to, in addition to talking about blight and all the tools that we could create to address this, but also addressing the issue through a public safety lens. Whether in your district or mine, vacant properties, abandoned properties, we know are usually susceptible to incidents of violence. And usually the city doesn't often respond until there is a stabbing or a shooting. And so how do we make sure that we're proactive instead of reactive? In addition, the Problem Properties Task Force will hopefully be at this hearing talking about what they do and how we can strengthen their tools. Many of us complain about properties all the time that aren't just vacant or abandoned. So folding into your hearing this piece around that property on Folks Street that people call about all the time, day in and day out. Literally, I could go down a street in my district and ask, residents, which property on this street is a problem, and they will all point to this property over here. And sometimes it's very difficult for us to do anything until there is an unfortunate incident. And recently in my district, there was a shooting on Evans and Morton Street. And after the shooting, I called some folks in the community, and everyone said that this particular property had been a troublesome property for a long time. Either they called 311, they called 911. So looking forward to adding this piece into the problem properties conversation, but it's all interconnected and interrelated. And so I am excited for the conversation, but also taking steps in partnership with you to give us more tools to do something. So thank you so much. At this time, I'd like to recognize Councilor Presley.
Thank you, Madam President, and I commend both of you. Very smart and necessary discussion. And I wish to have my name added. I just wanted to say, and this picks up a little bit on something that you raised last week, Council President Campbell, and that is that what has frustrated me with these empty storefronts is that often what we're seeing after there's been a vacancy for a long time is that they put something in there that can generate rent quickly, but is not adding value to the neighborhood or the community. I don't believe any community is well served by a concentration or dominance of any one industry. Every business has a role to play sort of in our commerce, but I don't want to see 6 Metro PCSs within a 3-block radius, and so one of the things that we've been exploring in a working group for a little bit now are zoning reforms around development, and maybe that's one way that we can get at that. Sort of, you were talking about fast food establishments, but ultimately, how do we get at achieving a healthy small business ecosystem that provides a diversification of goods, and where there isn't the pressure, where the community has some say, and we don't want to have this blight, but then in a push to just finally get something in there, that we are putting something on our main streets that is not meeting the needs of the residents and the neighborhood and is not ultimately adding value. So that is something that I wanted to just bring forward in this discussion. I look forward to the hearing. And again, I commend both the makers for putting it forward.
Thank you, Councilor Presley. Let's see, Councilor Janey, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. First, I would love to add my name to this. I want to say thank you to you, Councilor Matt O'Malley, and Madam President Campbell for bringing this forward. This is such an important issue for all the reasons we've already heard. Certainly an issue that affects all neighborhoods throughout the city of Boston, and in particularly my district, we see a lot of vacancy. I could point to the Dartmouth Hotel, which is it's the building where the former Nubian Notion was held. For most of my life, the upper levels of that building, vast majority of my life, it just stayed empty and boarded up. Same thing with Palladio Hall right across the street, for the longest time was boarded up. We can look at Hotel Alexandra, which is the former home of Skippy White's on the corner of Mass Ave and Washington Street. It's now the current home of a beauty supply store, but again, the upper level is still vacant. As chair of the Small Business Committee, very concerned about the empty storefronts. I've already, introduced a hearing order on this matter to kind of really look at this holistically. And in that, I mentioned the empty storefronts just in my home neighborhood of Dudley Square. There are 12 empty storefronts. I think, this is a deep, deep problem. One with some of the issues that Councilor Presley raised, where we see folks who are quick to just put anything in, which is a problem. But the other issue is that we see some landlords who are just holding out for a big payday, whether to sell, at a future date, or to rent out at a future date, waiting for, something better to come along. And that hurts all of us. This also adds to the problem when it comes to litter in our commercial districts, in our residential areas. Snow removal is an issue. So, this is a huge issue. So, and very, very timely. This is an issue that we heard at yesterday's housing hearing. So, again, proud to add my name and look forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Janey. Councilor Edwards, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, and I wanted to commend the makers for this, I think, very timely topic. And we did touch on a little bit on it yesterday, and I just wanted to not only express my support for this and have my name added, but also to note that there are certain things that I hope that we will continue in this conversation about vacancy. I think that we are dealing with a real crisis in how we are seeing housing. It used to be a long-term investment strategy for a lot of middle-class or working-class folks to finally be able to retire in dignity. And what we're finding more and more is that this is really just a new form of a stock market that's happening on main streets, and that we are not prepared for how fast and how much people are trading homes like they're trading stock to their immediate and financial benefit. Many people who do not live here, these are just groups of investors coming in and really just kind of taking more than they're giving. So I think that this is a wonderful example of of the city pushing to make it more expensive to do nothing. And I hope that that's where the conversation goes when we're talking about the vacancy. How is this becoming, it's less convenient to hold on to something and do nothing with it than it is to just sit there and hopefully wait for that big payday. I think we have an example in the Seaport where you had vacant properties, or a lack of development was actually to people's benefit. You just held on it long enough and found a buyer for quadruple the price that you bought it for, then you hold it on long enough and then buy a buyer for quadruple of what you bought it for. And at the end of the day, when we have development, we ended up with an area of Boston that is not reflected in diversity, either racially or ethnically or economically, after all of that trading. I can look in East Boston. We were just recently tagged, but there's this almost ghost-like looking building that's several stories high that has plastic and debris flowing in and out of it. It's the Loftel. It was, sold for millions of dollars more than it was purchased for. I think it was a $10 million profit, and nothing has happened with it. Nothing is going to go in there. It seems like there's no plan, and we're trying to get the owners to the table to do something because it's such a blight on our neighborhood. So just some points of some suggestions for our discourse. When it comes to data collection, I was disheartened to know that the city didn't have a lot of means of getting at it, though I suggested that they look at, the rental registries, look at the deeds, and look at ways of which we are already collecting data and see how they overlap. I also think a wonderful way of community organizing and involvement is to have those folks on Main Street, small businesses, point out to or create a list of vacant properties that we would love to see things happen with. So we could work with the community to do that. I also think when it comes to also identifying, but also partnering with the BPDA, Plan JP Rocks and other plans that are looking at corridors from the big picture and down to the granular level of housing and where it's going to be. That means that they're looking at and seeing where these vacant properties are at the same time. So when we're talking about planning in corridor specific or any master planning process, that the vacancy be part of that process as well, and figuring out how, as part of the identifying the vacant lots. And finally, I think something that and I'm so happy you brought this up actually in the hearing yesterday, Councilor O'Malley, was business displacement. And how much that impacts on several levels, not just the community, but the workers, and how that, and obviously the local business, and how that is actually really helping or hurting us and destabilizing our communities. So I'd love for us to look at possibly, if we're making it more expensive to hold vacant land, that if we do ever generate revenue from that we couldn't look at a form of an acquisition opportunity program for local businesses that we have for housing, where nonprofits, CDCs are buying up buildings to rent them out to low-income or moderate-income families, that we aren't looking at ways to also help businesses purchase where they've been for 27 years, for 30 years. They don't have an ownership track for that. It's something that I think we should re-examine as well.
Thank you, Councilor Edwards. I'm assuming you want your name added?
Yes.
At this time, Madam Clerk, could you add Councilor Edwards' name? Anyone wishing to add your name, please raise your hand. Councilor Edwards, Councilor Baker, Councilor Siomo, Councilor Sabi George, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Janey, Councilor McCarthy, Councilor Presley, Councilor Wu, Councilor Zakam. Councilor Flaherty, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Please add my name, and through the chair to the maker, maybe he would consider adding the assessing department to come as a guest as well.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of these issues are driven by property values, which are driven by assessed values, and we're seeing the mom and pop stores, we're seeing those neighborhood treasures arguably just being priced out, and we really need to have a serious conversation about tax incentives and tax breaks for long-term residential and commercial property owners in this city, particularly our fixed-income seniors who, through no fault of their own, are just seeing this massive development and expansion around them, and either being forced to have to sell and/or having to make decisions about being able to pay their property tax, being able to pay for heat and fuel and medications or what have you. So long-term residents, homeowners and property and commercial owners should not be being punished by lots of great things that are happening in our city, because in large part they were really responsible for making the city the great city that it is. So I think the time has come to have a very frank discussion with the city's assessing department with respect to assessed values. Councilor Flynn and I are currently now trying to fight to save the neighborhood dollar store in our community. And we've met with the respective suitors, particularly the commercial property owner, who is non-committal, really has no problem with them if they came back, but he's realizing the new enhanced value of the new development that's happening on the site, plus the pending new assessed values. He's probably going to be looking to bring in some type of chain outfit, which is obviously referenced. And so we need to balance. It's important to get new investment. It's important to see shovels in the ground and cranes in the skylines. But at the same token, again, it's those community treasures, those neighborhood jewels. It's very, very infrequent that we'll see, like Charlie's, for example, on the south end. Charlie's closed and sold, and the new owner came in and kept Charlie's. I can't point to another instance across the city. Maybe my district colleagues may have one or two in their respective districts, but that's not the way it normally goes. New owner comes in, puts a spit shine on the place, old employees get thrown out, new people come in, change the sign and the name on the door, change the menu, and then they're off and running. And so I think the time has come for this body to really sort of stick our nose into this, and I think through this hearing could lead to great dividends if we could get the assessing department in and to have a very frank conversation about giving these tax incentives, and if some way arguing to try to find a way to freeze or to limit the increase to long-term property owners when things are happening around them through no fault of their own. Thank you, Madam President.
No, thank you, Councilor Flaherty. And Madam Clerk, if you could add Councilor Flaherty's name. Councilor O'Malley, you have the floor.
Thank you. Just I neglected to mention two thoughts, but I wanted to thank all of you for signing on to this hearing order. I'm really excited about it. I wanted to thank particularly the Main Streets districts in District 6 and abut District 6 that were part of crafting this: Rosendale Village Main Streets, West Roxbury Main Streets, and then I've got 3 in JP, Eggleston Square, High Jackson Square, and Center South. I also wanted to thank Will Poff Webster from my team, my JP liaison, and Jeanette Ebers, who's my co-op from Northeastern this summer, who've done yeoman work, really diving into the weeds on this. And then finally, excellent point, particularly from Councilors Edwards and Flaherty, as it relates to assessing. A lot of these businesses and residences, quite frankly, have remained vacant because it is a tax write-off, and there are some incentives on the other side, which is problematic. So one thing that's been a creative idea that Main Streets have pushed, most recently in District 5, have been having pop-ups, have been having other sort of nonprofits work with them. So there's a lot of interesting things that we can do here that are going to activate the space, provide for public safety. To your point as well, Madam President, we had an abandoned building in West Roxbury that fire occurred because of that. And I've been purposeful in not naming specific businesses, although we could. But suffice it to say, I was reminded this morning, last year's budget signing, many of us, it was in Councilor Zacum's district, and that building remains a vacant building, and it was sort of seen as a way to clean things up. So there's no shortage, and it's high time we get to work on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor O'Malley. Docket 0536 will be assigned to the Committee on City, Neighborhood Services, and Veterans and Military Affairs.
Docket number 0537, Councilor Edwards and Presley offer the following resolution honoring Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. and recognizing his contribution to the City of Boston and to the United States of America.
Councilor Edwards, you have the floor.
I just wanted to rise today, and I'm going to keep my comments very brief, as I believe all of us are benefiting from this incredible man's legacy, and may also have comments and to recognize that today is a day of some mourning, but also some form of celebration as well. While we lost the man 50 years ago, we didn't lose his legacy, and we didn't lose the hope that he gave much, or this nation, if not the world, that we can rise to the occasion and we can be better, and not be so cynical about the way that human nature is, or the fact that our country comes from such roots embedded in slavery and inequality. He was not from Boston, but he was certainly Boston blessed. Like many of us who are not born and raised here, he actually went to school at Boston University. He was a preacher in Roxbury at the 12th Baptist Church, and he was a resident of the South End with his wife, or at that time his fiancée, Coretta Scott King. And so it's incumbent, I think, for the City of Boston to recognize that he is still, to a certain extent, a son of Boston, and that he got educated here and helped to also raise our spirits literally and figuratively as he continued on his own journey to become the great man that we all know him as. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is not only a reminder of bold, impassioned, and amazing strength and standing up against incredible odds, but he also is a reminder of what people can do by just organizing and sticking together. That odds may seem huge, that at times it may seem that we are facing immense oppression, but that at the end of the day, it's the bridge building, it's the community that we create through love and understanding and empathy that ultimately will win and is winning. And so I just want to conclude my remarks by saying that we should never, as public servants, we have a special obligation not only to remember him, but to remember what he stood for: bold, unafraid, and challenging the oppressions that we see on a day-to-day basis. I know, again, I stand with people who support not only this resolution, but the words that I'm saying. I am very blessed to stand here with you. I'm very honored to be able to stand here with you on this day on April 4th, and I attribute that also to his legacy and what he did for our country.
Thank you, Councilor Edwards. Councilor Presley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Councilor Edwards, for the invitation to join you in this resolution. I will also keep it brief. I probably should have just played a video of his words. Maybe we can do that later. But I just think it's important to note that his final speech was specifically about this, was for the sanitation workers. And I think in the rewriting of history, and in this revisiting of the dream that he so eloquently articulated, that sometimes what gets lost in that is that his struggle and the pursuit of a more just and fair society, the foundation of that was not just about social justice, it was about economic justice and the acknowledgement that they are inextricably linked to one another. And so he died. His final act, as it were, was in fighting for sanitation workers, to be seen as a man. Those were the signs they carried that day. I am a man. To be seen as a man and a whole person and to be treated and regarded with dignity. Our own Local 26 is in Memphis today in solidarity with brothers and sisters in the labor movement. I want to underscore that word as well. We are all inspired by the uprising of mobilization efforts that are taking place throughout the country in resistance to a lot of what is coming out of Washington and the unrest in our country. Dr. King, gave us the blueprint for the path forward. Our country is at a crossroads, and as tempted as I am to have my heart breaking at these inequities and how entrenched these inequities and inequalities continue to be, to become more persistent and more systemic, I'm tempted to have my heart break, but then it swells, and I'm comforted because Dr. King gave us the blueprint. He was not just marching. He was not just inspiring others to boycott and to march. He was mobilizing. And that mobilization was ultimately about legislation. And so he has given us the path forward. He has given us the blueprint. He was more than a dreamer. He was a revolutionary. And he was a disruptor of the status quo, and he did it nonviolently, but he was disruptive. And so must we be disruptive. And so must we be coalition and movement builders. And so today is the opportunity, and every day, to rededicate ourselves and to renew our commitment to that very thing, to rededicate our hearts, to purpose our feet, to fix our eyes on a more fair and just society. And you cannot have that without social, economic, and racial justice. And so, certainly the task is before us to be not only freedom riders, but freedom deliverers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Presley. Councilor Zakhem, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to thank Councilors Edwards and Presley for this resolution, asked that my name be added. I had the privilege of being with so many of our colleagues and other elected officials and leaders from across the Commonwealth earlier this week as we recited in, I think, 130 parts, the final speech by Dr. King to the mountaintop, which he delivered in Memphis, I guess 50 years and 2 days ago today. And that was incredibly moving and powerful to look out and see how many people here in the city of Boston from across the Commonwealth care and wanted to stand up and be counted on this important time. And we're in a difficult time right now, and there are two quotes from Dr. King that I think are very timely, or they're always timely, and that's paraphrasing one of his quotes actually, but it was, "The time is always right to do what is right." And certainly now, in 2018, we don't need any prompting on that front, both as elected officials and I think just as residents and citizens of the Commonwealth and of the United States. But just as importantly, he also said, our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. And as Councilor Edwards in her remarks was talking about building coalitions and reaching across barriers and into different communities, and people who may look different or pray differently or love differently or speak differently than us, we are all Americans, we are all residents of Boston, we are all residents of Massachusetts, and whether we're talking about economic justice, racial justice, civil rights, and working together on this council over the years, we have stood up over and over again. We have spoken out when it wasn't convenient, when things weren't leading in the news, and this body has acted and we continue to act, whether we're looking at issues of economic equity through housing, through the hearing that Councilor Edwards chaired yesterday, whether it's the Boston Trust Act, which this body passed in 2014 to protect undocumented people here in the city of Boston, whether it's the resolutions we routinely pass, sometimes successfully, sometimes not, calling on Congress or the state legislature to enact more protections for people in the city of Boston and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and the United States. Today I'm wearing a pin, Support the Safe Communities Act. I was up at the State House earlier today for Immigrants Day. That is just as important as all the things we've talked about and the work that Dr. King did in his all too short life. So I won't go on and on. I'm certainly moved by this anniversary and the work that we have to continue doing, not just for the next 50 years, but for the next 50 minutes, the next 50 days, next 50 months. More and more, we need to do it and stand together. So thank you again to our colleagues for bringing this forward, and I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Zakem. Councilor Flaherty, you have the floor.
Madam President, please add my name.
At this time, Madam Clerk, can you add Councilor Flaherty's name, Councilor Zakem, Councilor Flaherty's name, Councilor Zakem, Councilor Baker, Councilor Siomo, Councilor Asabi George, Councilor Flynn, Councilor McCarthy, Councilor O'Malley, Councilor Wu, as well as the chair. I didn't forget you, Councilor Janey. Councilor Janey, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Madam President. I also would like to add my name. I also would like to commend Councilor Edwards and Councilor Presley for bringing this forth. It's very important. And not to go on too long, just kind of want to echo some of what I heard from my colleagues, but just to kind of reflect, that there's still so much more work to be done. When I think of Dr. King, I really think about his fight for racial and economic justice, and we heard that earlier. We like to talk about it as a civil rights movement of the 1960s, but the reality is that we are in a modern civil rights movement now. Whether we look at what is happening with the movement for Black Lives, whether we think about what our young people are doing in terms of the March for Our Lives, whether we think about the Women's March, Occupy, all of these different movements. And I think about, so we've already heard a couple of quotes today of Dr. King, but I think about the fierce urgency of now and the importance of us to really take up that mantle and continue to live out his legacy, because there's still so much work that needs to be done. And as the district counselor for Roxbury in the South End, certainly very proud that he saw fit to make Boston his home, but certainly the neighborhoods that I represent. And that is what really, truly helped to shape the Dr. King that we all know, love, and respect now. And so just proud to stand in solidarity, to recognize his legacy, but more than that, to really try to live that legacy. And I think that's what we, all try to do every day. So thank you for bringing this forward. Councilor Presley, Councilor Edwards, and definitely add my name.
Thank you, Councilor Janey. Madam Clerk, if you could add Councilor Janey's name, Councilor Edwards and Councilor Presley, suspend and pass. Yes. At this time, Councilor Edwards and Councilor Presley seek suspension of the rules and adoption of docket number 0537. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0537 has been adopted. Moving on to personnel orders.
Docket number 0538, Councilor Campbell for Councilor Baker.
Councilor Baker seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 0538. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0538 has been passed.
Docket number 0539, Councilor Campbell for Councilor Asabi George.
Councilor Asabi George seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 0539. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0539 has been passed. Moving on to actually, I'm informed by the clerk that we have no late file matters, so thank you. And moving on to the green sheets. Anybody wishing to remove a matter at this time may do so. Councilor Presley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to pull docket number 0317 and 0318. That's from page 3 of 7.
Okay. Would you like me to read that into the record, Madam President?
That would be great. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
On page 3 of 7, In the Committee on Healthy Women, Families, and Communities, docket number 0317, sponsored by the mayor, message in order for the confirmation of the appointment of Dr. Jennifer Childs Roshak as a member of the Boston Public Health Commission's Board of Health for a term expiring January 15, 2021. It was referred to committee on February 28th. Docket in the Committee on Healthy Women, Families, and Communities, docket number 0318, sponsored by the mayor, message in order for the confirmation of the appointment of John Fernandez as a member of the Boston Health Commission's Board of Health for a term expiring January 15, 2021, also filed in committee on February 28th.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
I'm sorry.
Councilor Presley.
Okay. Both of these dockets are orders for the confirmation of 2 members of the Boston Public Health Commission. There are pressing votes awaiting these 2 members at the next BPHC board meeting, and the deadline is quickly approaching. Dr. Childs Roshak and Mr. Fernandez have both had long and distinguished careers in both the medical field and in public health advocacy. Dr. Jennifer Childs Roshak received her medical degree from Temple University School of Medicine in Philadelphia and also holds a Master's of Business Administration from our own Boston University. Dr. Childs Roshak, that may be a familiar name to you, is currently President and CEO of the Planned Parenthood League of Massachusetts, as well as President of the Planned Parenthood Advocacy Fund of Massachusetts. John Fernandez is a graduate of the College of Worcester in Worcester, Ohio, and he holds a master's degree in government administration from the University of Pennsylvania. He currently serves as the president and CEO of Massachusetts Ioneer. I believe both of these nominations would bring an incredibly important lens to the BPHC board. So as the chair of the Committee on Healthy Women, Families, and Communities, I ask that we suspend the rules and confirm the appointments of Dr. Jennifer Childs Roshak and John Fernandez as members of the Boston Public Health Commission's Board of Health.
Thank you, Councilor Presley. Madam Clerk, if you could poll that committee so that it's properly before the council.
Thank you, Madam President. On docket number 0317, in the Committee on Healthy Women, Family, and Communities, Councilor Baker.
We're voting to pull this out of committee?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Councilor Baker, yes. Councilor Campbell.
Yes.
Councilor Campbell, yes. Councilor Siomo. Yes. Councilor Siomo, oops, I'm so sorry. We're
Yeah.
not polling. We're polling the committee.
I was like,
We do appreciate your votes, though.
we'll start over.
We'll start over.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
In the Committee on Healthy Women, Families, and Communities, Councilor Presley. Yes. Councilor Presley, yes. Councilor Wu. Yes. Councilor Wu, yes. Councilor Zakam. Yes. Councilor Zakam, yes. Councilor O'Malley. Yes. Councilor O'Malley, yes. And Councilor Asabi George. Yes. Councilor Asabi George, yes. The committee has voted unanimously to remove this matter from committee.
So docket 0317 is now properly before the council. And at this time, Councilor Presley seeks suspension of the rules in confirmation of Dr. Jennifer Childs Roshak. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0317 has been confirmed.
And on docket number 0318, the Committee on Healthy Women, Family, and Community. Councilor Presley? Yes. Councilor Wu? Councilor Zakam? Yes. Councilor O'Malley? Yes. And Councilor Asabi George? Yes. Madam President, docket number 0318 has received a unanimous vote of the committee to remove it from the green sheet.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Docket 0318 is properly before the council, and Councilor Presley seeks suspension of the rules and confirmation of John Fernandez, which is docket 0318. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0318 has been confirmed. Anyone else wishing to move a matter from the green sheets? Okay, moving along. I am informed by the clerk that we have 4 late file matters, which in the absence of objection will be added to the consent agenda. Hearing and seeing no objections, the 4 late file matters are added. The chair moves for adoption of the consent agenda at this time. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The consent agenda has been adopted. At this time, I would like all guests and my colleagues to please rise as we adjourn. I apologize. Thank you. Councilor Presley, for what purpose do you rise?
Just to highlight 2 of the names that will be adjourned in memory of today. On commemorating the assassination of Dr. King, let us not lose sight of the fact that that was a life that we were robbed of due to gun violence. More recently, were robbed of the potential of 2 more lives that didn't get to bring to bear their full contribution to the world right here in Boston. One is Keith Palmer, who will be adjourning in memory of today, but I wanted you to know who they are. Their mother, Neva Scott, this is the 3rd son that she has lost in 4 months. We will also be adjourning in memory of Michael Ross, a young man who grew up in what is often referred to as H Block, a community besieged by gun violence, and he had gotten on a positive path and had turned his life around, only to have it stolen because of gun violence. So I just wanted to make sure that as we adjourn in memory today that you know who those 2 young men are, Keith Palmer and Michael Ross. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilor Presley. Councilor McCarthy, you have the floor. For what purpose do you rise?
To make a unanimous statement regarding our meeting after this meeting.
Go right ahead, Councilor McCarthy.
That Hyde Park, my hometown, is celebrating its 150th birthday. We're going to have a big celebration this summer. So we're going to have a little slideshow and a presentation for everybody afterwards, just to get everybody involved. I will be shaking you all down for donations.
Thank you, Councilor McCarthy, and thank you, everyone, for rising and remaining standing. That is awesome. But now let's honor those who we have lost. So today we will adjourn today's meeting in memory of the following individuals. For Councilor Siomo, Claire Intrani. For Councilor Edwards, Graziano Gus Capodalupo. For Councilors Edwards and Asabi George, Joseph Brancato. For Councilor McCarthy, James Polo, Mary Munger. For Councilor Presley, Keith Palmer and Michael Ross. And for all councilors, Winnie Madikizela Mandela. And of course, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who was assassinated 50 years ago today. A moment of silence, please. Thank you. The chair moves at this time that when the council adjourns, it does so in memory of those incredible and aforementioned individuals. We are scheduled to meet again on Wednesday, April 11th at 12 noon in this chamber. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The council is adjourned.